welcome to another industry moment. Look, this week I have the pleasure of talking to Dan Crawshaw, the General Manager of Waipak. We're going to be talking about tethered closures, but Dan, before we get stuck into that subject, give us a little bit of background about your business and some context as to what you guys do.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Well, we're based here in Hawke's Bay of New Zealand on the East Coast, and we purchased this business actually as a business that had gone into receivership back in 2017, mainly focused around food packaging. New Zealand being quite a small market, we've got a very diverse range of machinery from HDPE blow moulding to two-stage stretch blow moulding. So we manufacture the preform and then convert it into bottles. We sell preforms and bottles, and we also manufacture all the closures to go along with that packaging. We've been in the packaging industry or the plastics industry for well over 30 years as a family, and we've got another division of the business which focuses on construction products. And sustainability is really at the core of what we do. We're pretty wildly innovative and do some pretty crazy things at times. But the results are amazing. And yeah, tethered closures is an interesting one, and one that's kind of quite topical here in New Zealand as well. So yeah, keen to knock around a few ideas and how it affects different industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, before we go into tethered closures, as you pointed out, sustainability and the circular economy is a big part of your business. We see that frequently on LinkedIn, your videos that you do, the educational pieces on recycled content. I guess what's the key driver and motivation behind that?
Education, really.
Yeah.
It's one thing we've found, and I've found since coming into this industry, is the whole subject of recycling and what happens to plastic downstream has been somewhat warped and uneducated. But I guess we're really passionate to make sure that the industry and probably most importantly, the end consumer actually knows what is happening within the recycling stream. It's not uncommon for somebody to ask me what we make, and when you say bottles, they just about take a step back, But actually, when you drill into it, plastic is one of the most recyclable products out there, as you guys would know.
Yeah, we see things very similar, and the same goes here in Australia. I think there's a lot of disconnect in the supply chain all the way through to the consumer, understanding plastics and the circularity of it. I mean, as we say all the time, you look at PET as an example, a material that you're very familiar with at Waipak. It is a very circular material. There's no reason why a bottle can't be recycled over and over again. And also the other thing we're harping on about all the time is the carbon footprint. It's very easy to say, let's move away from plastic and back to glass, but there's a lot of considerations in the carbon footprint and overall recyclability of the product. So, look, I think it's great what you're doing on that front. We really enjoy tuning into your videos on a weekly basis, and I would encourage all of our followers to jump on and give you a follow to keep up with your content. Look, we'll move onto the subject matter of tethered closures. For us, I guess, just to start, at the end of the day, we want to see, plastic is inherently recyclable. So tethered, closures or lids are typically made out of polyolefins, and there's no real reason why that resource shouldn't be recycled. So for us, it's a very interesting concept, and we've seen some big brand owners, certainly in the last couple of weeks, make some announcements globally that they'll be looking into tethered closures as a bit of a case study to capture that resource. The big issue that we see here in Australia with closures is that if they're separated and they're put in the recycling bin individually, they won't get captured through the MRFing systems and waste management system, given the size of them. So they will be separated with glass and then become a contamination in the glass stream. So, the advice that we've given previously is to squash the bottle down, tighten the closure back on that bottle so that it can then be passed through and it can go through to the plastics recycling. But I guess, Dan, I mean, how do you see it as a producer of products and a manufacturer of closures yourself? What are your thoughts on the tethered closures?
Yeah, well, when you manufacture closures, obviously we're processing a lot of virgin material and you're putting colour with it, and then it's going on a bottle and being used and then goes into the waste stream. I thought it was quite interesting actually to discover. I always thought that even if they were loose, they would still get recycled, and it wasn't until I started drilling into it a little bit that I found that actually the interesting part of it is that due to the size, it drops through the sorting process, and as you say, ends up with glass, or potentially in the long run will end up in landfill. So then you get some councils saying, well, it's going to end up in landfill anyway, we want you to put it in landfill right at the start. But as you say, it's a polyolefin, it can be recycled. It's just a matter of hanging on to that. And I think there are downstream processes that can handle it and are built to handle it, because they handle the neck rings, they handle other things such as labels as a way of separating them from the bottles, and then we can actually use that resource. And I think, I haven't done the numbers, but I'd imagine the amount of closures by weight in Australia and New Zealand would be significant.
Yeah, you make a really good point there with the neck ring, and you're right. In the hot caustic wash process or hot washing process, it does act as a separating mechanism as well. So polyolefins will obviously float given their density. So we're already capturing a component of that. The other interesting point I think is that there is a lot of disconnect, certainly from council to council and region to region with respect to recycling. I mean, some councils, and I'm sure you see this in New Zealand as well, will say, put the cap back on the bottle. Others will say, take it off. So there's no standardization around recyclability, and I think that does further contribute to confusion at the consumer level. It's certainly a key aspect of it.
Yeah, if the tethered closure thing is ever going to work, there's got to be standardization from region to region. And the thing that's a bit of a worry is that for New Zealand, for example, if the government say, well, okay, caps off, when we start to get products that are made in Europe, for example, with tethered closures, when they come out to New Zealand and be sold, you're not going to be able to get that cap off. So therefore, the consumer is going to be confused. So I think caps on is my vote, and how we can make that work with all closure manufacturers to be able to, because if a cap has a retainer ring or a TE band, then it's not so hard for it to for them to stay together as long as they're designed that way. However, if there's plenty of caps out there that don't have a TE band at all, so how they'll be handled, sure. I'm not sure. There might be one for the designers, Ben.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And more broadly, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the tethered closures go as a test case overseas. I would agree with you. At the end of the day, we want to capture back as much plastics for recycling as possible. There's no reason why we shouldn't be recycling and reusing this valuable resource. So, look, I really appreciate your time, Dan. It's really interesting to hear and see what your business is doing down there in New Zealand. It's just overall, it's fantastic. I think we need to see more of it. So, as I said, I would encourage everyone to give Waipak a follow and keep up to date with the latest. But once again, Dan, appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll talk more on this.
No trouble. Thanks very much, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.